Deep beneath the churning waves of the South China Sea, two of the world's most elite naval commando units face off in a high-stakes underwater showdown. The Israelis from Shayetet 13, legends of covert ops and daring raids, arrogantly issue a challenge to the underdogs from the Philippines NAVSOG. They think it'll be a walk in the park, a chance to showcase their superiority. But as the first bubbles rise from the depths, something goes horribly wrong. The Israelis, caught off guard, watch in disbelief as their plans unravel one by one. By the end, it's not just a loss. It's a total humiliation, a 0-5 disaster that leaves them regretting ever issuing that dare. How did the mighty fall so hard? Stick around, because this story of pride, precision, and unexpected prowess will keep you hooked until the very last breath. Let's rewind to where it all began. It was the summer of 2024, a time when tensions in the Asia-Pacific were simmering like a pot about to boil over. The world was watching as superpowers jockeyed for position in disputed waters, and behind the scenes, alliances were being tested through joint military exercises. Enter Shayetet 13, the Israeli Navy's premier special forces unit. Known as the Men of Silence, these guys are the stuff of legends. Formed in the fires of Israel's fight for independence back in the late 1940s, Shayetet 13 has a history drenched in audacity and success. Picture this. During the Six-Day War in 1967, they pulled off what many called suicide missions, infiltrating Egyptian harbors under the cover of night to sabotage ships and gather intel that turned the tide of battle. Their training is brutal. Think months of grueling selection where only the toughest survive. Divers who can hold their breath for minutes while planting explosives on enemy hulls, snipers who hit targets from rocking boats in stormy seas, and operatives who vanish into the shadows like ghosts. Shayetet 13 operates far beyond Israel's borders, often in hostile territories where failure isn't an option. They're equipped with the latest tech, advanced rebreathers that leave no bubbles, silent submersibles, and weapons modified for underwater combat. In the global special forces community, they're revered, sometimes feared. Whispers in military circles say they've never met a challenge they couldn't conquer. On the other side of this fateful equation were the warriors of the Philippine Naval Special Operations Group, or NAVSOG. These are the Philippines' own SEALs, born from humble beginnings in 1956 as the underwater operations team. Over the decades, they evolved, drawing inspiration from American SEALs while adapting to the unique challenges of archipelagic warfare. By the 2000s, they'd become NAVSOG, a force specialized in sea, air, and land operations, SEALs in every sense. NAVSOG's history is one of resilience. They fought in counterinsurgency ops against rebels in the dense jungles of Mindanao, conducted maritime interdictions against pirates in the Sulu Sea, and even played key roles in the Battle of Marawi in 2017, where they cleared urban strongholds from ISIS-affiliated terrorists. Their training is no joke. Candidates endure the infamous Hell Week, swimming miles in shark-infested waters, surviving on minimal sleep, and mastering everything from close-quarters combat to psychological warfare. But unlike their Israeli counterparts, NAVSOG often operates with limited resources, hand-me-down gear, improvised tactics, and a spirit forged in the typhoon-prone islands of the Philippines. They're underdogs, sure, but they're scrappy, adaptable, and fiercely patriotic. In a world where bigger budgets often win, NAVSOG proves that heart and ingenuity can level the playing field. Now, how did these two units end up in a head-to-head clash? It started innocently enough, or so it seemed. In early 2024, as part of a broader multinational exercise called Pacific Sentinel, hosted by the United States to strengthen alliances against potential threats from China, elite units from around the world gathered in the Philippines. Shayetet 13 was there to share expertise in maritime counterterrorism, while NAVSOG hosted as the local experts. During downtime between drills, camaraderie turned competitive. Over beers at a makeshift base on Palawan Island, a group of Shayetet operators started boasting about their underwater prowess. "We've taken down entire fleets without a ripple," one Israeli commando bragged, his eyes gleaming with confidence. "You Filipinos are tough on land, but underwater? That's our domain." The NAVSOG guys, ever polite but proud, smiled and nodded. But inside, a fire was kindling. Lieutenant Commander Ramon Rambo Santos, NAVSOG's lead operator, a stocky veteran with scars from a dozen ops, couldn't let it slide. "Why don't we put it to the test?" he suggested casually. The Israelis laughed, thinking it was a joke. But when the challenge escalated to official channels, it became real, a friendly wager, a series of 5 underwater operations simulations. Winner takes bragging rights, and the losers buy the beers for the entire exercise. The Israelis, confident in their superior tech and experience, dared NAVSOG to step up. Little did they know, they were about to regret it big time. Each op was designed to test different aspects of underwater warfare: stealth insertion, sabotage, reconnaissance, hostage rescue, and a final endurance challenge. Neutral observers from the U.S. Navy SEALs would judge, ensuring fairness. They brought locally modified rebreathers, homemade explosives, and an intimate knowledge of the local seas passed down through generations of fishermen-turned-warriors. Op 1. Stealth insertion. The goal was simple: penetrate a simulated enemy perimeter undetected, plant a bomb on a mock submarine, and exfiltrate without triggering alarms. The Israelis went first, their team of 4 gliding through the water like shadows. Captain Eli Cohen, Shayetet's point man, led the charge. With years of raiding Iranian ships under his belt, he was a master of silence. They used their rebreathers to eliminate bubbles, hugging the seafloor to avoid sonar pings. Everything was going smoothly until they hit an unexpected current, a swirling vortex common in these tropical waters, but unfamiliar to the Mediterraneans. Cohen signaled to adjust, but the current pushed them off course, scraping against a coral outcrop. A tiny clang echoed, enough to set off the simulated sensors. Alarms blared in the exercise control room. Score: fail for Shayetet. Now, NAVSOG's turn. Santos and his team knew these currents like the back of their hands. They'd trained in them since boyhood, diving for pearls in similar conditions. Santos planted the device with seconds to spare, and they slipped away undetected. The observers were stunned. 0-1. The Israelis brushed it off as a fluke. "Bad luck with the water," Cohen muttered, but doubt crept in. Op 2. Sabotage. This time, teams had to disable a floating minefield by cutting specific wires on underwater explosives, all while evading enemy patrols simulated by drones. Shayetet's tech shown here, or so they thought. Their wire cutters were precision engineered, and their HUD displays showed wire schematics in real time. But the mines were rigged with Filipino ingenuity, fake wires mixed with real ones, mimicking the improvised explosive devices NAVSOG had disarmed in real ops against Abu Sayyaf terrorists. The Israelis, relying on their databases, cut the wrong sequence first, triggering a dud explosion that lit up their position. Drones swarmed, killing 2 team members. They barely completed the task, but with heavy penalties. NAVSOG, however, they dealt with similar booby traps in the Sulu archipelago. Petty Officer Maria Amara Lopez, the team's explosives expert and one of the few women in NAVSOG, spotted the fakes instantly. Her hands, steady from years of defusing bombs under fire, snipped precisely. Clean success, no losses. The score ticked to 0-2. Whispers started among the observers. Were the Filipinos really this good? As the sun dipped low on the horizon after Op 2, the tension was palpable. The Israelis huddled, recalibrating their strategies, while NAVSOG celebrated quietly with fist bumps. It was around this point that the story takes a turn toward the inevitable regret. But before we dive deeper into the next ops, if you're hooked on tales of elite warriors and epic underdog victories like this, hit that subscribe button right now. We drop stories like this every week. Real history mixed with thrilling what-ifs that keep you on the edge of your seat. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss out on the action. All right, back to the depths. Visibility low, risks high, collapsing rocks, poisonous sea creatures, and the ever-present threat of nitrogen narcosis. Shayetet 13 prided themselves on this. They'd mapped Syrian coastal caves during covert missions. Lieutenant Yoel Levi, their recon specialist, led with thermal imaging gear that pierced the murk. But the caves here were different, labyrinthine, shaped by volcanic activity, with false passages that looped back on themselves. Levi's team got turned around in the darkness, their high-tech compasses confused by magnetic anomalies from nearby iron deposits. They surfaced late, with incomplete maps and one diver nursing a jellyfish sting. Incomplete success, but barely. NAVSOG, drawing from their experience in the underwater tunnels of Palawan, used in World War II by Japanese forces and later by smugglers, navigated by feel and memory. Ensign 1 Ghost Ramirez, a former cave diver from Cebu, marked every turn with bioluminescent markers harvested from local plankton. Full map, no incidents. 0-3. The Israelis' faces darkened. This wasn't just luck anymore. By now, the dare was turning into a nightmare for Shayetet. Captain Cohen called a timeout, rallying his men. We've faced worse, Hamas tunnels, Iranian patrols. These are just games. But deep down, regret was brewing. They'd underestimated NAVSOG's home advantage, their raw grit honed in real-world chaos where resources were scarce and failure meant death, not just embarrassment. Op 4, Maritime Hostage Rescue. Simulate boarding a submerged, hijacked vessel, neutralizing terrorists, and extracting hostages, all underwater to avoid surface detection. This played to Shayetet's strengths. They'd famously boarded the Gaza flotilla in 2010, subduing armed activists with precision. Their entry was flawless, silent ascent, breaching the hull with shaped charges. But inside the mock sub, the terrorists were rigged with Filipino-style ambushes, tripwires triggering flashbangs, narrow corridors favoring knife fights over guns. The Israelis, trained for open-sea boardings, struggled in the confined space. One killed in a simulated knife duel, another tangled in netting. They rescued the hostages but took heavy casualties. NAVSOG, they'd practiced this in rusting wrecks off Mindanao, where pirates held sway. Chief Petty Officer Diego Blade Cruz, a master of close quarters, led a blitz. Feints with decoy divers, then a swarm attack that overwhelmed the defenders. Hostages out, 0 losses. 0-4. The observers cheered. The underdogs were dominating. A grueling relay, swim 5 miles with gear, plant flags at checkpoints, evade pursuit drones, all on a single tank of air. Exhaustion set in for both teams, but Shayetet's pride pushed them. "We in this now," Cohen growled. They started strong, their Olympic-level fitness shining. But the tropical heat tapped their acclimatized bodies, and a school of barracuda, common here but startling to outsiders, forced a detour, burning precious oxygen. NAVSOG, conditioned to the humidity and familiar with the wildlife, paced themselves like marathoners. Santos, drawing on stories from his grandfather, a World War II guerrilla diver, led the charge. They dodged drones by hiding in kelp forests, conserved air with rhythmic breathing techniques passed down in Filipino folklore. As the Israelis gasped for air and surfaced early, NAVSOG planted the last flag with air to spare. 0-5. Disaster complete. In the aftermath, as the teams surfaced to a stunned crowd, the regret hit Shayetet like a tidal wave. Cohen extended a hand to Santos. "We dared, and we learned. Respect." The Israelis had come expecting to teach. Instead, they were schooled. This fictional clash highlighted a timeless truth. Never underestimate the underdog, especially in their own backyard. NAVSOG's victory wasn't just about skill. It was about adaptability, cultural knowledge, and unyielding spirit. But let's expand on that first op to really paint the picture. As the teams geared up on the deck of the USS support ship, the air was thick with anticipation. Cohen's eyes scanned the horizon, recalling a night raid in 2018 where his team had slipped past Iranian patrols to tag a nuclear sub. Piece of cake, he thought. Santos, meanwhile, adjusted his weathered mask, a patch from a Marawi op sewn on his fin. His team joked in Tagalog, masking nerves with humor. "Ingat sa alone, mga kapatid," he said. "Watch the waves, brothers." As they dove, the water enveloped them like a living entity. For Shayetet, the current hit like an unseen enemy. Cohen felt the pull, his muscles straining against it. "Adjust bearing," he signaled, but the coral loomed. The scrape was minimal, but in this game, minimal was fatal. NAVSOG flowed with the current, using it to slingshot forward. Lopez, her ponytail tucked under her hood, spotted a gap in the reef, a shortcut locals used for fishing. They planted the device, hearts pounding, and vanished into the blue. Back on surface, the score lit up the board. The Israelis' jaws tightened. Diving deeper into Op 2, the minefield stretched like a deadly necklace across the bay. Shayetet's databases hummed with data from similar fields in the Red Sea. But these mines, designed by exercise planners with input from NAVSOG vets, incorporated bamboo triggers, cheap, effective, and invisible to scanners. When the Israelis cut, a puff of ink simulated explosion, drones descending like vultures. Mara Lopez laughed inwardly. She'd disarmed worse in the jungle rivers. Her fingers danced, identifying the real threats by touch, a skill from handling live ordnance with no backup. Success felt sweet, the team's bond unbreakable. Darkness absolute, echoes distorting senses. Levi's thermal gear picked up heat signatures, of bats, not subs. Panic flickered as they looped back. Ramirez, NAVSOG's ghost, hummed an old Visayan tune to stay oriented, his mental map flawless. In Op 4, the sub's confines amplified every breath. Shayetet's charges blew the hatch silently, but inside, chaos. Cruz's knife work was poetry, swift, lethal. The hostages cheered as NAVSOG extracted them. And the endurance, miles blurred into agony. Shayetet pushed limits, but the Barracuda swarm forced a scatter. NAVSOG herded them away with controlled bursts, conserving every ounce. This tale, though fictional, draws from the real grit of these units. Shayetet's ops in Gaza, NAVSOG's battles in Marawi. They're warriors who deserve respect. But in this what-if, the dare backfired spectacularly. As we wrap up, remember, stories like this remind us of the human element in warfare. If you love this dive into elite forces drama, smash that like button and share with a friend. Who knows what real clashes await in the depths?